Most bankers aren't ready to help you until after their third cup of coffee. But with Central National Bank's after-hours service, you don't have to wait for the bank lobby to open to get help. You can contact us from 6 to 8:30 in the morning or from 5 to 10 in the evening, and we'll connect you to a real, live, local person who can answer questions and fix problems 7 days a week. Bank different. Bank Central. Central National Bank. Member FDIC.
Hey, what's up, Blazer fans? Welcome to the Blazers Edge podcast, part of the Almighty Baller Radio Network. I am Tara Bowen-Biggs, joined as always by Blazers outsider Danny Marang.
Hey, oh boy. Well, draft's in the bag. Now what?
Well, it was a night of 1,000 cliches, of 1,000,000 tweets, and the real MVP was Woj with his thesaurus.
Shout out, Woj.
We are talking, of course, about the 2018 NBA draft. Dan, what was the highlight of the night for you?
The Kings kinging it and taking Bagley over Doncic. The Suns seemingly out of nowhere getting Mikal Bridges. John Hammond in Orlando sticking to his tried and true method of draft as much wingspan as possible. And Dallas turning into a must-see League Pass team by adding Doncic to pair with Harrison Barnes and Dennis Smith Jr. It's gonna be some fun teams to watch outside of Portland next season. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm super excited for Dallas. I think that's a great landing spot for Doncic. I mean, they have
get the wise old sage in Dirk.
Not the kind of guy who really, I mean, he's just not really a rookie kind of coach, and Doncic isn't really a rookie. So I think that it'll be he's just ready to go. He's ready. He's like I imagine him as like a businessman showing up in his suit, like, you know, ready to get to work. And it feels like he can do that.
But have you seen the photos of Carlisle with Doncic? They're like honeymoon photos, the way he's looking at him.
Wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, he found like the fountain of youth. It's like drafting Doncic has added 10 years of youth to Carlisle. Like, he's just smiling everywhere. Like, look what I got. He just looks thrilled.
Things are changing in Texas. Isn't it just interesting to see how things are going in Texas with all the uncertainty in San Antonio and Houston having been on the rise last year, and now here comes Dallas. I don't know. It'll be interesting to keep our eyes on. How do you feel? Do you feel like Phoenix Suns had a good night? It feels to me like they had a good night. It feels like they got some things done, taken care of.
DeAndre Ayton was the most sure thing in the draft as far as going number one. Everybody knew kind of the Kings were on the clock as soon as the Suns got the number one overall pick. And then to be able to swing a deal for Bridges, now you've got a four-man lineup of Devin Booker, Bridges, Josh Jackson, and DeAndre Ayton, and then insert forward or guard here. That's a hell of a core. You got to give the Suns some credit because at least on paper, they're doing things right with how they've drafted recently.
You know, I thought you were going to talk more about highlights being things like Woj tipping, not tipping all of the picks
Woj was
in
great.
Such a glorious manner.
You know what, though? We got to shout out Mark Stein here because all the other networks had the mum is the rule kind of thing going. And Stein, because he's not, locked into any of those obligations, was just tweeting everything out. And it was like all the other guys realized, like, oh, God, Woj isn't held back, or Stein isn't held back by any of this. We got to get going. So Woj found his way around it by not saying the pick out and about, but using the most sublime and artistic way possible, lasering in on picks and focusing on and eyes locked on and God, I mean,
not disinterested in.
Yeah, I mean, he
even got the double negatives out. It was awesome.
Like, I wonder if that was all him doing that, or if somebody else gave that idea to him. But wherever it came up from, it was just absolutely brilliant.
It's just it's one more of those little things that makes the NBA such a special league, especially when you look around at all of the other leagues and all of the trouble and trials and tribulations they are going through. And it's not like everything in the NBA is perfect, but there's just these certain little things that they just really hit it out of the ballpark. I shouldn't use a baseball analogy. They just really put it through the hoop, I guess.
They did great shooty hoops things.
Yeah. Well, the other storyline that really gripped me and I think hit a lot of people was the Mikal Bridges story about him being drafted by the 76ers.
His hometown
just so
team.
Glorious. And that beautiful, wonderful, sweet interview with him and his mom. And she was so excited because she was staying in town and she's the VP of human resources at the 76ers. And it was just so great. She was so happy and they were just like so adorable. And then he goes off and does all his press. And there's like an hour's worth of just, as I understand it, just like solid interviews, one right after the other, right after the other. And on Twitter, like we all saw that he'd been traded and somebody would be like, Mikal Bridges is still doing interviews. He still thinks he's playing for the 76ers. And then like 10 minutes later, it'd be like Bridges still thinks he's playing for the 76ers. And it was just so heartbreaking.
Yeah. I mean, for a guy
I wonder how he took it when he found out.
I mean, a guy who's from Pennsylvania, played his ball at Villanova, won a national championship at Villanova, getting drafted by his hometown team. I mean, people can say what they want. Guys are making millions. They'll be happy anywhere. Yeah, but you can be happier places.
Well, especially with your mom.
Right?
She works there.
And not just that, like, geographically, you really can't get that much further away than Phoenix.
Right. Originally, I thought that he'd been traded to Sacramento, so Phoenix, like in the grand scheme of things, maybe it's not so bad.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, if you're asking me, like, where
and he's going to a good team, and it will be a good fit.
Well, but, good teams all relative, and the Suns certainly are dysfunctional as hell too. But not being wrapped up in the Kings right now, the Kings not taking Doncic still just that was one of the biggest storylines for me, taking Bagley. But hey.
Yeah.
The Kings.
Well, let's laser focus in on the Blazer draft picks for now.
All right.
Talk a little bit about the guys that are the newest Trailblazers. So first of all, we had Anfernee Simons. Your colleague Joe Simons is Simmons. Very excited.
I've already heard so many guys that are just like Anfernee Simons, and I'm like, he's not Ben Simmons' cousin, folks. It's Simons.
No, it's Simons. It's 1M. 1M.
You'd think that'd be easy, but yet. It happens quite often. But yes, Joe Simons.
Like one of the first reading rules that I remember is like if there's 1M, it's I don't know. I can't remember. I can't remember anymore. I've internalized it so much.
The big story here is Joe Simons.
Making your colleague Joe Simons very excited because he can go out and buy a Simons jersey.
Yes.
That's a Blazers outsider, Joe Simons. So the Blazers took him at number 24. And the interesting thing about Simons, most people probably already know this, but he did not go to college. He was actually supposed to go to Louisville, but he decommitted after the NCAA scandal took hold and Rick Pitino left that program.
Good choice.
So he was at a place where he could have decided to go to another school, but he decided to stay at IMG. So there's a great article in Blazers Edge today by Steve DeWald about the types of thing, like what his day was like as a postgraduate program at the academy. So he basically took a college class and then worked out and trained, played basketball, took a variety of other like kind of like mindful classes to like get his mind focused and everything. So it's pretty unique. And I wonder how many, if others will follow in his footsteps. So what are your thoughts about Anfernee Simons?
So Simons is a kid who the game comes to very naturally, very easy. He's smooth. He's explosive. He's a scorer. With all that in mind, I think he's going to be a good player, but he's a few years away. Physically, I know here this podcast sounds like it could be taken from last year.
A few years away from a few years away.
Yeah, so it's not that his game really needs to mature, but it does. But it's more about his body. He's tiny. He's 180 pounds soaking wet. He's a
little rail.
He's still a kid physically. He hasn't had that. He doesn't have the grown man body yet, and that's okay. I mean, the different guys grow at different rates. I mean, just look at the guy who's the same age as him and DeAndre Ayton, who looks like a Greek god. I mean, there's levels to these things.
So I was listening to one of the post-draft programs, and Chad Doing was talking about Simons, and he kept repeating over and over again how Simons is 19. He's only 19. He's only 19. And I went and I looked, and 8 of the top 10 draft picks were 19 and younger. 2 of them were actually 18 years old. So, like, how much of that youth is really a concern anymore? Are you just primarily focused on the fact that his body is not as big as other people's bodies, or is there something else about him being only 19? Because the other choice was also 19.
You know, I can't speak totally for Chad, but Chad and I have talked about this. The next day on the radio, prepping for the show, we were talking about what it means to kind of be, at that age. And it's not necessarily about the age. It's more so about the body and physically and his body of work. The numbers that he put up last year, albeit against top-level high school competition, still against high schoolers. Like these top-flight academies like IMG, like Montverde, it's good competition, and he's going to get up against the likes of R.J. Barrett and Cam Reddish, who are going to be, the top recruits in this next class, as they all head off to Duke, seemingly. But, no, seriously, I mean, 3 of the top 4 recruits are heading to Duke in Reddish, R.J. Barrett, and Zion Williamson. And, Simon's had a chance to play against a lot of these guys. But he's not playing against guys. Let's contrast this with Luka Doncic, who at 18 years old was playing in the second best league against grown men. Like, people can say the level of competition isn't this, that, or whatever. There isn't a college team in the country that's going overseas and beating Real Madrid. Like, this is a team with grown men who have size, speed, and strength that none of these college kids do. That's just kind of the reality of it. So it's hard to put a measuring stick on what Simons can actually do against top caliber competition.
I was wondering if some of the other part of the concern that people who are worried about the Blazers having gone out and taken such a young player is that, for many years we've heard about, people being on Damian Lillard's trajectory.
The timeline.
And last year they drafted a 19 and a 20-year-old, and this year they brought in 2 19-year-olds. And that doesn't feel like anymore Damian's timeline.
Yeah, no, honestly, it feels a lot like Neil O'Shea and the Blazers are kicking the can. I mean, I can't really put that any other way, except for it feels like they're kicking the can and not wanting to make a move. And again, talking about Chad Doing, the theme that I think irks him and a lot of other people is that if you look around the Western Conference over the last couple of years, teams are willing to take risks. Like moving.
Isn't this a risk?
I don't think so. I think it's hedging your bets. I mean, how risky is it to draft a guy who's this young, who, if he does or doesn't pay off, you can he was a 24th pick, no big deal. Like, you're drafting on potential, and you're not really, that to me isn't a risk. That's just kind of, all right, we need to restock the cupboard, and let's hope we hit a couple home runs with these guys. And I don't think those are necessarily risks as much as hedging your bets. You take as many high ceiling, high potential guys as you can, and hope one of them pays off. I know that may sound like risk, but it's probably the safest play, as opposed to taking somebody that doesn't have a high ceiling, who can come in on day one and be a productive player, but not have a ton of room to grow. And I'm not.
What you're saying?
Go ahead.
I don't know. I think we have different definitions of risk.
Yes.
or hedging your bet, or whatever else you call it, because it sounds like you're saying taking the player who was more ready to go was less risky than drafting the one with the high ceiling, but we're not quite sure he's going to get there.
But they're not counting on him. That's the thing, is they're not isn't him to be ready for a couple years.
Right.
Well, if you take somebody like
isn't that what we heard last year about Zach Collins, though? Didn't we hear that he was going to need some development? I mean,
he still needs a ton.
At the very beginning that he was going to be ready to take the floor and get all these minutes.
He didn't. That's the thing. Is like this common misconception that Zach Collins is getting all of these minutes. He's getting 16 minutes a night, 17 minutes a night. The reason he's contributing is because there's nothing in front of him. And I'm not saying this to be detrimental to Zach Collins. He is still a couple years from being a regular contributor in the box score night in and night out.
Okay, I thought that last year when he was drafted, I didn't expect him to play as much as he did. Like I thought he was going to be on the bench,
I get that part of
most of the season.
No,
but suddenly,
I totally get that part.
A couple months into it, he started playing.
Yeah, but the Blazers aren't counting on him for production, and they don't have a whole lot in front of him. It was more of we don't really have a choice, so we have to play him. Because they weren't getting from production from anywhere else. I mean, Maurice Harkless was unplayable for long stretches of the season last year. And, I mean, their front court depth beyond Ed Davis was suspect at best. So,
well, then that leads into Anfernee Simons being a backcourt player.
You said it. You said it.
Strong backcourt.
You said Simmons.
I did.
I told you. Everybody does it. I only have it because Joe Simons
you never do because you're perfect, right?
No,
Dan?
I just have it because my co-host would beat it into me already.
Anyway, not to distract. So we'll talk a little bit about the position that he plays and in relation to, Dame and CJ and anybody else that is around. So we've got, in guards, we've got Shabazz Napier, Wade Baldwin. I guess what does the presence of Anfernee Simons mean for Wade and Shabazz, do you think?
First of all, I want to call Anfernee Simons Little Penny just because it would just fit so perfectly with the commercials.
So
that and if he actually played like Penny, good God. But
can we talk about how awesome it is that he was named after Anfernee Hardaway, that his parents liked Anfernee because he's from Florida, and his parents liked Anfernee Hardaway, Penny Hardaway, so much that they named their child after him. I think that is so awesome. I absolutely love that. And then did you know that later on they got to know each other and he actually played for Penny Hardaway at Team USA?
Yep, it's absolutely perfect. I have talked to my significant other about naming our first son Brandon Damian or Damian Brandon. I'm not sure which one. She's not exactly on par with it, but we'll figure it out. But
she hasn't closed the door.
She hasn't completely shut the door. So
okay,
I'm still holding out hope. But and to get back to Simons as a player and how he fits on this team right now. First of all, I think the Blazers have made the conscious decision to move on from Shabazz Napier. I think everybody's kind of accepted that. I think Shabazz needs to go get his money, go get his bag, and go do his thing. I wish him nothing but the best. I wish there was a way that he could take next to nothing and stay here, but that's my own, kind of selfish demeanor and not really rooted in any kind of reality. And with that, I think they're counting on Wade Baldwin to be that third point guard at this point in time. If you look at the lineage of how Portland has handled the backup point guard over the last decade. You've got Patty Mills, you've got Tim Frazier, you've got Shabazz Napier. Like, they've done a really, really good job of finding guys off the scrap heap, developing them, and turning them into very good backup point guards. I would argue that Portland's probably done a better job at that than any team in the league over the last decade. So if they see that in Wade Baldwin, more power to him, because I think he has the tools. Physically, he's got more tools than any of the other guys. He's bigger, he's longer, he's stronger, he's faster. If he can get any semblance of a jump shot, and I think the Blazers have shown that they are very good at developing that, then Wade Baldwin will serve as a more than ready and capable backup point guard. And that means for Simons that he's not going to really have to count on a lot. And here's the problem that I think the Blazers are running into. As one of the few teams without a G League team, they're not going to be able to have the control and the oversight and the readiness to, like, let's say that they had a G League team in Beaverton, which I've heard is one of the possibilities. Because you live there. I don't live in Beaverton anymore. Come on now, I live in Tualatin. I may have gone to high school in Beaverton, but I am no longer there. But and there's a reason for this. If you have them close by, then when your team is practicing at home and the G League affiliate has a game night or an off night, then Simons is in the practice facility in Tualatin going up against Dame and CJ. And Dame is a guy that has shown that he is more than willing to work with young guys, take them under his wing and help develop them. Think about the last few backup point guards that have come through here. They all sing Damian Lillard's praises. Tim Frazier is lost without Damian Lillard because of all of the tutelage and training and confidence that Damian Lillard and Tim Frazier got from their friendship off the court. Like, that's a huge component, I think, that gets overlooked in the development of a player. And I think Simons is going to struggle without some of that.
Well, one thing that I thought of a couple things with Simons. One is him just like, being in the gym by himself at IMG because he's not, playing on a college team. And that sort of made me sad thinking about doing that, like without a team around him to do it. Cause like you can redshirt, like there's a new thing now basically where you can redshirt while you're in the NBA. Mm-hmm. Soon enough that might actually happen when the one and done rule goes away. Yep. But the thing that I was actually really kind of mulling over the other night is the last year, not to just like continue to talk about Zach Collins, but last year it seemed that the Blazers hit upon this strategy where they paired Zach Collins up with Ed Davis, and everybody saw that pretty quickly that it was happening. And I was wondering if that might be something that they might try with either one of the new picks. And we'll get to Gary Trent Jr. in a minute. But yeah, the not just like, you're a rookie and you have a big, but like you're actually on the court together and you're actually learning. And I don't know that would work so well with the guards, but I was thinking that it might work a little bit better with Gary Trent Jr. I don't know. What do you think about?
I think for Simons it would be huge. I think for Trent it would be huge. Now Trent, I think we'll get to him in a minute. Simons though, I think would be massive deal to make it work to be alongside Damian Lillard. And that's why I think that not having a G League affiliate is going to be huge. Because if he's playing with the Reno Bighorns or the Canton Charge or what is it, the Maine Red Claws. God, did I really just name off a couple G League teams? I spend way too much time watching basketball.
Just keep going.
Yeah, let's not. That's a rabbit hole we need to go down. But I don't think that it's going to be as conducive an environment for him, and I wish that weren't the case. And now, as opposed to last year, and I think this is the last time I'll reference back to Collins at all, I think that why people were upset or frustrated with that pick was because of where he was picked and the assets justified to be used to move up and take him. I think part of the unwarranted frustration pointed at Simons right now is that the dude's a 24th pick. Like, I have my own reasons for not liking the pick because I think he would have been available a little bit further back, but I've heard also that the Lakers coveted Simons as well, so if they felt like they had to take him there, they had to take him there. I don't necessarily disagree with the pick in the micro version of how you want to look at all of this, because I think Simons does have the potential to be good. He's shown the ability to score. Between Dame, CJ, and Simons, athletically, Simons is the most explosive of the three. Like, he has got bunnies for days. Kid can jump out of the gym. And I think that's a welcome sight. He's got a quick jumper. He can score off the dribble. He is not the playmaker in the pick and roll that Dame and CJ are or were. Like, those guys came out of the womb running the pick and roll. That is not Simons' strong suit. And that's where I think it'll be the most detrimental, is learning from guys that are that good at that particular skill set would do him wonders. But as far as development goes and what to expect from him, I expect him to be in the G League for a significant part of the year. If nothing else, because he needs to get some run against higher level competition, against bigger dudes. And he needs to spend a ton of the time in the gym. And he's not going to get any real burn with this team right now. He's just not ready as of right now. Now, could he change and could he be like Collins? Sure. I don't foresee that happening, especially with the way that the depth is concerned. But I wish the kid well, and I have nothing against him being the pick at 24. As for Gary Trent Jr., he's a guy who I think, where a couple weeks ago we were talking about Pat Connaughton still being a possibility with this team next year. I think Gary Trent Jr. may signal the end of Pat Connaughton's time here in Portland.
What do you like best about Gary Trent Jr.'s game?
So I spent some time with Gary Trent Jr. at Hoop Summit last year in 2017. Spent the week with him, got to talk to him a couple times for probably about an hour total, maybe a little bit more, and then watch all of his workouts, stuff like that. I love his competitiveness. I love his confidence. I love the way he carries himself, and I love his jumper. He gets it off quick. He barely elevates. It's like this quick little flick that just It's one of those jumpers that when he lets it go, you think it's going in. And in college, he shot 40.2% from three. Like that's a good clip. Now, he wasn't a guy that shot from very deep, so he may need a little bit of time to adjust to the NBA three. But I think he's about as pure shooter as there was in this draft. And God, Portland needs shooting like there's no tomorrow. So I have no problem with that pick at 37.
He's a 3-point shooter. He's kind of, like a lot of, I think some people have said that he's kind of like Alan Crabb. He can take that low usage, catch and shoot, or, he doesn't need to have the ball in his hands a lot. He can run around and he can shoot a lot of threes. And
he's a bit of an old school shooter where he moves off the ball very well. But more so than Crabb, when Crabb came into the league, Trent has a better and tighter and more creative handle. Like he can create his own shot and he can get to the rim.
Okay.
Now here's the kicker. He is a god awful, atrocious, oh my God, terrible defender. He is a turnstile.
Okay, just calm down with
this
hyperbole.
This is not hyperbole. This is every scout's review of him.
So what did they say about his defense?
He is a turnstile. He's a absolute. His side to side, his lateral quickness and lateral anticipation is terrible. He does want to compete, so this is something he may be able to improve upon.
How about his hands?
Defensively, he's not real active. He competes, and I think that may translate. And that's the fact that he competes says probably more about him than it did ever about Alan Crabb. Like Alan Crabb, you can't get much more disinterested on defense than Alan Crabb was in his tenure here. There were very few times.
Alan Crabb, it was hard sometimes to see if he was paying. I mean, he just was. He's so mellow sometimes that you kind of wanted to just be like, "Hey, are you paying attention?"
Exactly. And Trent that's not the case. He's a very competitive dude. And talking to Jason Quick, he was able to talk to him during the workouts. Was it 10 days ago or so? At the practice facility, and he said the one thing he came away from Gary Trent Jr. and talking to him is that kid is confident. Like he carries himself with a ton of swagger. He thinks he's going to be ready to compete from day one, and I like that confidence. I like that cockiness because when you get to this level, if you even question yourself, you'll get eaten alive. And I think growing up in an NBA household. And then playing for Coach K, I think he's about as ready as you can be coming into the league for a one-and-done guy. There are certainly questions on the defensive side, but to have him come in for 8 to 10 minutes a night after the first 2 months of the season where he gets kind of acclimated, have him be a 38% three-point shooter who just is really in there just to stretch the floor with the second unit and, when Evan Turner's out there, to have another shooter out there that can do more than just catch and shoot is going to be huge in the grand scheme. But night to night, it's not going to be massive, but just enough to change things up a little bit. And I think at 37 and giving up 2 second-round picks down the road, I think it's a good call. Gary Trent Jr. was a guy that I had targeted. My thought was the Blazers were going to trade the 24 to Atlanta for the 30 and 34. And take either Simons and Evans or Simons and Gary Trent Jr. That was like when they brought him back in for the second workout, they basically just shot a flare into the sky that said, "We're taking Anfernee Simons."
Right. So they did what you predicted that they were going to do
in a roundabout way,
as I recall, as they were going to take a couple of lower guys that had. I thought. You thought that they were going to go with somebody who had a high ceiling like Simons, but is sort of risky too because people aren't really sure having the way he spent his last year. So what's next for the Blazers? Neil Olshey sat at the press conference not long ago talking about how they were going to go after veteran talent.
Guys that can contribute immediately.
The draft is over. They did not use any of their their one draft asset to acquire a veteran. They used it to draft somebody, and then they drafted an additional player. Where do they go from here to get that veteran?
All right, so there's 2 options that are available to them now. That's trade and free agency. I think free agency is going to be kind of the thing we talk about here the most, with free agency a week away. Yay! Just in time to get our hopes up in time to have them all dashed.
Okay, that's your fault for getting your hopes up. That's all I'm saying. Okay, so people, this is my little sidebar story. On draft night, there were a lot of people who were feeling pretty down about the Simons pick, and
a few people.
A little bit. There was a lot of people.
I would say it was overwhelming.
Appealed to me and said, "I need your optimism right now," and I was like, I can't just transfer my optimism to you. Optimism is a choice that
it's a state of mind.
Right. And it's like, sometimes it's harder, and for some people it's, they've got much more going on, and optimism is a much more difficult circumstances. But we're talking about the basketball team that we enjoy watching for entertainment. And if you can't find optimism for that, I can't just transfer mine to you. So what's your optimism level going on here, especially after what happened with draft night and with free agency around the corner?
It's not really high because of what the historical record has been under Neil O'Shea when it comes to signing free agents and trades. I've heard that the TPE is this magic thing that they wave around. Like, it's an asset, it's an asset. The only player that's been moved over the last 5 or 6 years that's even remotely credible utilizing the TPE is Trevor Ariza. And Trevor Ariza was kind of okay at that point in time, and he was going from the Wizards to the Rockets. Now he's kind of revived his career a little bit. Not that it really fell off that hard, but he's been much more valuable in Houston. And again, I don't think it's really any surprise that the Houston Rockets were the team that utilized this. Mm-hmm. They added him to a team with James Harden and brought in Clint Capella. It's been over a couple years, but again, Trevor Ariza wasn't like this big signing. It was.
So what do the Blazers do?
Okay, so the TPE in my mind is going to be a guy that's out there that's got a year left on his deal, so it's not going to haunt Portland for the long haul. It's a team that wants to clear space to either bring somebody else in or get underneath the luxury tax right away to kind of make this deal fit. So when you start talking about that, you're looking at guys who have an option year, who might opt in, and then can be moved depending on what the rules are on their contract. So in my mind, the best possible scenario for them to address the wing need would be to pick up a guy like Thaddeus Young, who's got a $13.5 million deal.
Okay. Zoom tight.
Did I not mute it fast enough? Sorry about that, folks. Looks like I get something to go in and clean up. But Wilson Chandler just opted in, and he was a guy that I was kind of hoping would fit that bill, but then the Nuggets drafted Michael Porter Jr., and Michael Porter Jr. is probably not going to play this year. Mm-hmm. So they're going to want Wilson Chandler to kind of fill those minutes. So then you're looking at an Alec Burks or a Terrence Ross or you got to go pretty far down the list at this point in time.
So what attributes do you look at in this veteran
wing
besides
3 and D,
having the right price tag?
Wing 3 and D. That's what you're looking for. Is you have got to find a way to defend on the perimeter, to have some positional flexibility, to create off the bounce and knock down an open shot.
But does their playoff experience or their leadership potential,
don't care about
how old they are, how long they've been around, does any of that matter?
If you're talking about for the TPE, it's a rental. You're just trying to add something somewhere, someone. Thad Young's 30 years old. He's been in the league 11 years. So how long? Wilson Chandler's been in the league 11 years as well. He's 31. Alec Burks is 26. These are guys that are, who they are, what they can do, and I think
these are guys who got paid in 2016 on 3-year deals,
or 2015. Yeah, it's one of the two cases really, and you're just trying to add guys who have more than one skill set. If you've been listening to the podcast at all over the last 18 months, the one thing that I've said about this team is they've got to get away from siloed players. They cannot have these guys that just do one or two things. They need more guys with a broader skill set. And they cost money. And what don't the Blazers have right now? Money. Mm-hmm. And they're going to be helped a little bit by the fact that most other teams don't have a lot of money either. So they can bring in somebody, and I think it's highly unlikely that they'll bring in like a Thad Young off the TPE. But there is a chance. Now, the Pacers, I don't think are going to, like, if Thad Young opts in, I don't think they're going to let him walk. Like, I don't think they're trying to move him for any reason. And the problem with the TPE is you're adding somebody really that another team doesn't want for a variety of reasons. So that right there alone kind of makes you go, is it a perfect fit? So it's a strange situation.
There's like 5 guys that everybody wants
that
are available. And then there's everybody else. So that's not a unique situation so much for the Trailblazers, is it?
Well, I mean, when you're talking about taking a guy on a TPE, you're taking a guy basically for free, and the only thing you're going to send back is like a draft pick. And you're doing this as basically a favor to the other team. It's you have the capacity to eat their money so they can either not be in the luxury tax, to free cap space up to sign somebody else, or they don't want this guy on their roster anymore. So, I mean, you're taking them off their roster because they want you to. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, so it's not like you're getting the cream of the crop here. So everybody who's really hyped about the use of the TPE, I would urge you to look through the lens, not through the Olshey sales pitch, but through what it's actually been used for in recent history.
And that is not much and not very often.
No, exactly. I think it's been used 7 times since 2014.
So if they don't use it?
Then it's free agency. I mean,
okay.
In free agency right now, you're looking at, as far as who's available, excuse me, let me pull my list back up. Could you take a run at a Jabari Parker? Like, what's the price line for them to keep him? Because he's a restricted free agent. There's certainly risk involved there with 2 torn ACLs. Mm-hmm. Tyreek Evans, where's he going to want to go? And how much did he buoy his value playing as well as he did for Memphis last year? Then you start getting into a lot of bigs, and the Blazers don't need bigs.
Don't need bigs. We're good on bigs.
Yeah, and a guy like Avery Bradley would be great to add to this team if he was 6'6", but they don't need another 6'2" guy. Marcus Smart's trying to get his money. Contavious Caldwell-Pope's kind of a in-between. He's listed at 6'5", but he's really not quite that big. And again, what's he going to cost? Kyle Anderson with the Spurs, I think, would be a very nice addition. To me, he's kind of like lesser, like prime Nick Batum, but he played really well, for the Spurs, and they don't typically let talent walk if it fits their system. So I don't see them really having an option to get him. So then I think you go further down the list, and this is where I think that you may have an opportunity. Now, it depends on what the Cavs end up doing here and how much they value him, but Rodney Hood, I think, is a guy that would fit very well. 6'8", versatile, but he fits kind of what Portland's done over the last few years in kind of picking off the scrap heap. A guy who needs some redemption.
He really just kind of languished on the bench there in Cleveland.
Yeah. So he's a guy who I think could very well fit that. Now, I would love to add a guy like Rudy Gay, even as old and as much as that Achilles injury scares me, but I think he's beelining for Golden State. And then
from San Antonio to Golden State.
Yeah, he's living the rough life.
I don't want him. Not if that's what he thinks the path is. Come on.
Hey, you know what? I don't begrudge him. With that Achilles, you never know when your career's going to get over. So
yeah, well, he got his Puma money now, so
this is true. Exactly. Get that Puma money.
Hey, we have a couple of questions actually about this very topic.
Hit them.
Should we go ahead and turn to those?
Hit them.
Before you go too far down into them. So these are all from Twitter that you asked folks for questions for tonight. So this is from Chris Brezik, and he says, how do you think Eric Gordon would fit with the team should the stars align and Houston needs to ditch him for our trade exception? Could a 3-guard lineup with him work in small doses? So what do you think about that?
It could certainly work. I think that's incredibly small. They showed that it worked with Shabazz Napier, and Gordon's a bigger, stronger, faster more explosive version and better scoring version of that. Now, I don't think that would be the likely case that those three, Dame, CJ, and Gordon, would be on the floor at the same time if they did come together. I think it would be two of the three are basically on the floor at all times. And then situationally, you can close with all three. I think it could work for a year, and you're talking about basically if Houston is serious trying to get LeBron, they need to clear space. Again, you're praying and hoping, but what does that mean in the long term? I mean, I don't think a lineup of Dame, CJ, and Eric Gordon, as your top three guys, are going to last forever. I mean, it's just the effectiveness of a ton of small guards. I mean, it works in the 6'4" and under leagues, but not in the NBA.
Yeah, it's not a lot of length.
No.
Do they get any better defensively with him?
Not really. Gordon's a guy who could be a better defender. He's more about generating steals and getting in passing lanes than he is about playing consistent on ball and team scheme defense. Although he did play better defensively with the Rockets this year. And again, you're talking about taking on somebody who has serious injury concerns over his career. But as far as like adding an explosive offensive talent like Eric Gordon, it would honestly, if they added Eric Gordon, I don't think they really have added a offensive player of his caliber since Scottie Pippen. So, I mean, if you're talking about adding a guy, because I mean, just think about the Blazers' history outside of the draft. Who have they added that was a guy that was a no doubt guy that could go for 30?
Right, that could just come in and score. Yeah, I can't.
Jamal Crawford's the only guy who even comes close.
Yeah. I mean, I guess they probably thought they were going to get a lot of scoring out of Gerald Henderson, didn't they?
Not like that, though. Henderson's more
Not like that.
Henderson and Gerald Wallace, like those kind of guys, they were more two-way slasher, glue guys. Like they were kind of do-it-all guys. Like Eric Gordon gets buckets. That's what Eric Gordon does.
So he doesn't have necessarily he's not one of those people that has three skill sets instead of two.
Well, he has three skill sets.
Somebody who could at least bring some offense and spread the floor.
He has three skill sets that they just all involve getting buckets. Like he can drive, he can shoot, he can pull up, and he can take a guy off the bounce. And he's a little bit of a playmaker too. And boy, even through his injury, he could still get up and dunk on some dudes. Like, don't get me wrong. If the best case scenario was that Portland took Eric Gordon into the TPE and then used their taxpayer MLE to sign some other like random wing like Ersan Ilyasova, like I wouldn't be against, like if that was the most they could do.
Right.
At bare minimum, it would be something
Eric
new.
Gordon, so Eric Gordon, not a bad fit, is kind of what you're saying.
Not a great fit.
Not a bad fit.
Like at this point, though, I just want to see them do something that that ups, not just something, but something that ups the productivity on one side of the floor. Like for the love of God, give me something consistently night in and night out outside of Dame and CJ.
Well, so Thomas Cogswell had a question about what are some ideal veteran 3-and-D wing TPE targets. You've already kind of listed some of those. Who are like really your favorites?
Rodney Hood is one of those guys, but he's a restricted free agent. So
you sort of landed on.
Yeah, but he's not something you're going to pick up with that. Again, because he's restricted. So Thad Young would fall into that. Kyle Anderson's restricted, so that'd be next to impossible. Let me take a look at the 2019s again. Alec Burks. Alec Burks is probably the best possible fit with timeline, experience, youth, athleticism, two-way play. Because he's a 6'7"-ish, 6'8"-ish wing who can create off the bounce, can get to the rim, can play defense when he wants to, and he showed out a little bit in the playoffs, which is why I don't think that the Utah will be looking to move him at all. But the problem with a lot of these guys who have their contracts coming up in 2019, they have a year left, almost all of them are bigs. Like it's truly incredible how many of them are bigs.
Like not a great time if you want to be a big bidding getting paid.
It's Fareed, it's Gortat, it's Zach Randolph. Al Jefferson, Jared Dudley, Kufus, Jermichael Green, Markieff Morris, Darrell Arthur, Cole Aldrich, Dwayne Dedman, Boban. Like and then the other guys are point guards. It's D'Angelo Russell, who's restricted, Shelvin Mack, Ish Smith, Patrick Beverly.
Right. So those wings
aren't
are
there
at a premium, not easy to find, nor have they really ever been.
No, and that's
to be
the
honest.
problem.
I mean, we're just kind of getting into the weeds of just like saying off names of players that are positions that the Blazers don't really need right now.
Yeah, I mean that's the reality of it, is that if you're trying to find that guy, like, it's very, very hard. Like we've been sold this, well, the Blazers have all these ways of attracting and bringing in talent, and it's like they are very, very limited, not just because of their limited assets and the things that they can use to acquire this talent, but the amount of talent that's available. Like, nobody's out there giving up good wings. Mm-hmm. Like it's the most precious commodity in the NBA market right now. So to get a good wing, it's going to cost you something, and that's where the Blazers are just like, whether it's dollars or personnel in a trade, and they don't really have
much
either
to spend.
Yeah, and they don't have much of either, and that's the problem they're running into.
Right. Well, you want to answer a few more questions?
Yeah, let's get on these.
Okay, these ones are the rest of them kind of are a lot of different topics. So do you have anything else you want to wrap up with the free agency or TPE discussion?
No, I think we'll touch on some of that here in some of these questions. So,
all right. So this one is from Robert Flom, friend of the pod, and he wants to know Blazers free agent you most want to keep, price aside, just as a player. So I bet you we might even have the same.
We have the same one.
Answer. Let's say it on the count of three. Okay. Blazer free agent we most want to keep. 1, 2, 3.
Shirt off Ed
Davis.
There you go. Okay. Perfect.
You never say it when I say 1, 2, 3. You never say it right after that.
I did.
Work on our time.
I did. I just said shirt off
Davis.
Ed. I just added the shirt off to it because I figured you would too.
Oh. No.
No. Okay. Fine.
Ed Davis.
But yeah, I think that's an easy one.
Yeah,
like,
so great.
He's just Ed is the dude.
He just fills so many. He does those intangible things as well as get rebounds. Like he needs to eat them for breakfast and to survive.
He's the kind of guy that everybody wants and needs.
He does other things as well. He's the wise man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's the guy at the table that everybody comes to the table to come and talk to him. You know, he's just got a lot going on.
You come see me on the day of my daughter's wedding. Yeah, basically.
Yeah, exactly. This is a fun question from Blueberry Joe. Blueberry Joe says, what's the best super team that you think LeBron could theoretically assemble next year if he just wants to win and would live anywhere and maybe even take a cut in pay? And could they beat the Warriors? So the best super team that LeBron could assemble, and would they be able to beat the Warriors? Well, I had kind of a crazy idea.
Well, the best one would be to go to the Warriors. So
no, that's a terrible idea.
I mean, if you want to
wash your mouth out with soap.
I'm talking about the best super
like
team. I mean, that's realistically the best super team.
LeBron is going to get all these together. Okay, how about this one? What if he went to OKC? What would LeBron and Steven Adams together be like? And Paul George stays as well. That's the important part.
It wouldn't work because Westbrook just needs the ball way too much, way more than Kyrie ever did. You need shooters around LeBron to be really dominant. That's what you really need. And so I would.
Okay, so what if they kept Paul George and they had Steve Adams? Because I just want Steven Adams to play on the same team with LeBron, and traded Westbrook. What if he orchestrated that whole thing and brought somebody else there?
Yeah, I mean, you could go that route. I think in a perfect world, sending him to Philly with Embiid and Ben Simmons, and then the Sixers trading off Markelle Fultz and Dario Saric for Kawhi. So it would be Fultz, Saric, and a first-round pick for Kawhi. That would be a team, while young, physically could just beat the hell out of the Warriors.
So Kawhi,
Simmons, Embiid.
Embiid.
Insert shooters here.
Yeah.
Robert Covington.
Keep JJ around.
Yeah, you bring JJ back for a year. You have Covington out there. Like, you just space the floor, and then physically. I mean, you'd have two of the best defensive players in the world in Kawhi and LeBron when he's engaged. Covington, who's an all-defensive player. Ben Simmons, who has the potential to be an all-defensive player. And Joel Embiid, who has the talent and propensity possibly to be a defensive player of the year. Like, the size, length, strength, and athleticism of that team may never be matched again.
Yeah, that would be pretty good. Could they beat the Warriors?
In the right circumstances, if everybody's healthy, they have the potential to. Because in my mind, the way to beat the Warriors has always been beat the hell out of them. Just physically grind them into dust. What makes Kevin Durant so great on that team, beyond the fact that he's a Hall of Fame caliber player, is that you can't help. Well, you don't need to help when you've got an all-world defender on damn near everybody. And then the length and the strength and the ability to switch, the ability to help, the wingspan and the length involved with that team. Like, Kevin Durant, like, it's difficult enough to contest his shot. It's very difficult when you can't really get anywhere near him because you have to give him space. Now you've got a guy whose shot is nearly uncontestable with space. Yeah, of course he's going to shoot 14 for 21, where he's basically taking uncontested 15-footers all game. Like,
is there any way we could get Steven Adams over onto the Philadelphia team?
No.
He could come off the bench,
I
the backup center.
I love Steven Adams, but I'm taking Embiid over Adams. I love the big.
You could back him up.
I love the big Kiwi, but Embiid. Watching Embiid just destroy Draymond Green possession after possession after possession when they try to play small ball would be one of the purest joys I'd ever had in my basketball life. So that's kind of what I'd be hoping for. That, and I get to watch the Celtics, after all of this nonsense of the last couple of years, and this Celtics exceptionalism never come to fruition, and the Lakers would, in their prime free agent destination, would get screwed over again. So it's like the best of everything.
They have a lot of cap space. Okay, so let's get back to the Blazers. With Orlando, this is from Rashid Walton. With Orlando drafting Mo Bamba, should the Blazers target Vucevic via trade? What would you think about targeting Mario Hezonja in free agency? I think he would shine in the Stott system, and it is the type of wing we need. I'm particularly interested in the Mario Hezonja part of that question.
Yeah, okay, so I've advocated for Vucevic for the last couple of years, and that was obviously pre-Nurkic. With Nurkic, I just don't think it's something that makes sense anymore. So
that would be like if they lost Ed and Nurkic, then Vucevic.
Then sure. I like Vooch. Defensively, you're definitely losing a lot, but offensively, he's a guy that can definitely score, and boy, does he gobble up rebounds. The other side of this is Mario Hezonja. Hezonja is a guy, and since they're the Blazers here, why not visit the Walmart of NBA basketball again? Go bargain, go to the vintage store and go bargain bin hunting again. They picked up Napier, they picked up Harkless. I mean, why not go to the scrap heap one more time and see what happens? Hezonja is exactly the kind of guy that the Blazers have targeted in the past. A guy who's got a marked, checkered basketball history, who hasn't developed anything to where what anybody expected of him. He's been disappointing. He'll be underpriced, and the team probably isn't inclined to keep them. So why not? So yeah, Hezonja is a guy that on paper kind of ticks all the boxes, and he's a guy, as we're getting into free agency, I think is a logical target for the Portland Trailblazers, because while he may garner more, it depends on what he's looking at and what he may want. But maybe the taxpayer MLE is enough to get him to come to Portland. I don't think that's necessarily the case, but it's worth at least picking up the phone and calling his agent. 6'8" guy who can create off the bounce, who potentially can be a catch and shoot guy. Like, again, you've got a lot of questions. And that's why you're hoping you can get him to Portland, because there are shortcomings and questions in his game.
Mm-hmm. But worth possibly at least making a call.
Taking the flyer on, because you're not throwing a ton of money at him. Mm-hmm. So if it does work out, then you do have a guy who is outperforming his salary, which is something Portland needs desperately at this point.
Okay, I got two more, but you're going to have to answer them faster.
Okay.
All right. This is from Scooby Doo. What role do you see Swanigan and Leonard having? Taking into account Nurkic back in a qualifier, Ed back in a 3-year, and somehow Collins carving out 25 to 30 minutes a night. Are Swanigan and Leonard insurance against injury and double insurance if Nurk and Ed get insane offers and leave? So yeah, Swanigan and Leonard.
Okay, Swanigan is a guy I think is just going to hold there as back front court depth and see what happens. And with that, see what happens. I mean, he's a 20-year-old, 21-year-old kid. What do you have to lose with him? You've got him under team control for 3 more years, including this year. Myers Leonard, on the other hand, I think Portland's just happy to let him kind of work out serve out his contract and move on. As much as I love Myers, I don't see his future here being all that bright as far as basketball is concerned. So yeah, they're really just there as insurance. Certainly things can change, and I hope they do for both those guys. I hope they both blow up. Like, I want everybody in this team to do well. But realistically, yeah, and I don't think Collins is carving out 25 or 30 minutes a night. Like, I think that they're still probably at least a year away from that. I think logically Ed Davis comes back probably on a 3-year. I think he's probably nailed that. And I think Nurk is back at bare minimum on the QO. So, yeah, it's basically just insurance offers.
Right. Okay, good job. One last one, Josh Simons. This is another Simons. Josh Simons says, Simons seems to be in the Dame CJ mold. Does that seem right? Maybe making one of them expendable once Simons develops. Trent Jr. seems a lot like Crabbe, but probably more athletic. Maybe even JJ Redick. Wondering what their comps might be. So I guess who would you compare these guys to? The one that stands to mind with me for Simmons
you said it again.
Is young JJ Redick. Not JJ Redick. Young Jamal Crawford.
For Simons?
For Simons. Was he always just a shooter, or did he, think 20 years ago, did he also,
Jamal
get up above the rim? Or was he always just a shooter?
He's a guy who, he was the guy who could finish at the rim with the most audacious finishes possible. He was always.
He just reminds me of him partly because he's so skinny and young looking, and I feel like for 20 years, if he has a 20-year career, he'll still be skinny and young.
Yeah, no, Simons is more explosive. Like he legitimately has some pretty nasty bunnies. Like he's in that 40-inch vertical category. Like he can jump out of the gym. I think the Dame and CJ comp is probably a bit much. Because he doesn't have the playmaking skills. I would go more towards my boy Donovan Mitchell. Like, I love Donovan Mitchell, but he is He is not the playmaker that Dame is.
Okay.
Now he can operate out of the pick and roll, but he's more about getting buckets. But he also plays defense. So if Simons can add the defensive side of the game to his game, then I think that's the more likely comp. But I'm not saying he's going to be a near all-star franchise caliber guard. But I think if you're talking about a comp, I think it's more about Mitchell's play style than it is Dame or CJ's. Because Dame and CJ, while they don't get the credit for being playmakers, they are much more crafty in the pick and roll and able to set themselves up or set up their teammates than Simons is at this point in his career. As for Gary Trent Jr., we talked about it already. He is a lot like Crabbe. And he is more athletic. Like, right now, he's probably bigger than Crabbe, size-wise. Like,
he's a big dude.
The kid is built, and you can see it on him. Like, he ain't built like his dad, because his dad was built like a bodybuilder. His dad was a massive... For anybody who doesn't know or doesn't remember or wasn't really watching the Blazers when Gary Trent Sr. was playing... Just go Google a picture of Gary Trent and look at how big he is. And you're like, oh, okay, now I see where the kid gets it from. But yeah, I think very much Crabbe-esque in his game. So if he, and here's the thing, at number 37, if he turns into Crabbe's production offensively and the Blazers don't overpay for it, great job. Fantastic job. And like, I know I've kind of poo-pooed on Olshey here throughout the podcast, but his ability to find talent in the second round is probably unmatched. DeAndre Jordan, Alan Crabbe, Will Barton, like he has found guys to be high-level production guys in the second round consistently over the last few years. Like that's not an easy task. So if he turns into Alan Crabbe, great, grand, awesome. But the key is to develop on the defensive end to enough to be passable, and then to retain that talent without paying through the nose for it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we did have one last question. I'm not quite sure what to make of it. It is from Corbin Smith, and he wants to know, who is more daddy, Evan or Myers? I think there's a joke in there, but I'm not sure. It goes over my head, but I'm going to take it super literally. I don't know which one of those guys, Evan or Myers, is more ready or likely to be a father. But I did think about it in terms of, who do you think Dame would most likely let babysit? Would be like one way we could look at it. Who do you think that is more prepared to like take care of a little baby for a little while, Evan or Myers? And I would go with Myers, because I think he would be awesome at it. And just so many weird things always happen with Evan Turner that I would just kind of be wanting to be like, yeah, I think we'll let Myers babysit, and Evan, you can just do your thing.
I just picture Evan Turner as like a modern era Uncle Buck.
Yeah.
Just
with the baby like in the Rolls Royce or the Bentley or whatever.
Exactly. Like, if you follow Evan's IG as opposed to Myers Leonard's, I think if you're gonna have one of them be the babysitter, I think it's a pretty safe assumption. If you wanted your child to
show up in an IG story, whose would you rather have it be?
I mean, if you want your baby to live in the bachelor lifestyle, then you send him home with Evan. If you want him to be the more traditional family atmosphere, I think we go with Myers and Elle. Like, I think that's just probably the safe assumption at this point in time. Not only that, I'm sure if they were with Myers, they would have a very healthy meal set and spend a lot of time in the gym. I think if with your Evan Turner, they would have the child would develop a quite exceptional fashion taste.
Yes, they'd have little silk robes and little fuzzy slippers.
Oh, yeah. That baby'd be balling from day one. So there's certainly positives to take from both.
Yeah. I think either could provide different unique aspects of
joint custody.
Fatherhood.
Joint custody. That's what you do. A little bit of time with Myers, a little bit of time with Evan.
Yes. Well, we should wrap it up, but not without an update on our Blazer5 Gaming boys.
Undefeated.
These sweet boys are my favorites. I am so glad for them. Okay, I have to recap what happened this weekend. This weekend, their undefeated record, undefeated in the regular season, because they did lose that one game.
They lost the title game in the opening tournament.
In the finals. Yep. But this weekend, their undefeated was on the line, and they were
down
playing
in the third and
against
down in the fourth.
Warriors team, who is like the worst team in the league, and they did not bring it. No. The Blazer5 Gaming guys, like, I was looking at the little inset pictures of them, and they looked tired, and frankly, they looked like they'd been up all night playing video games. But they struggled. They were behind. They were behind in the first quarter. They were behind at halftime. They were behind in the third quarter. And I was like, no, you guys, this cannot be the first game that you lose. Cannot be against the Warriors
Don't
Gaming.
Do this to me.
And they pulled it out. Thank God. And it was awesome. Because Blazer5 Gaming, everybody should check it out. It is exciting. And their games are super short, too. You don't even have to commit, like, a lot of time. You can, like, I sat there and I think I washed the dishes and, like, cleaned the kitchen while I was watching the game. So everybody go out, watch some Blazer5 Gaming. They're going to be playing, I think, again this weekend.
Yes, and I'm fairly certain I sent you the link to the One Wild Walnut Trash Talk reel.
The Trash Talk? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he was I'm glad they kind of put that together. We highlighted that last week. They're running. They're getting it done, and I love, like, if for nothing else, from pure entertainment value, when him and Mama I'm That Man start chirping, it's high comedy, because you can see them just completely getting under the skin of the other guys. And for those of you who have never been close enough to the floor or haven't, like, really heard a mic on an NBA court, this is about as close as you think you get to, like, hearing some of this, the back and forth, the chirping. I'm really glad that the guys at Blazers Gaming and 2K Gaming are sharing this stuff. This kind of goes right in line with the video that surfaced, like, was it 2 weeks ago, of the MLB umpire and the argument between at the Mets game. Like you kind of get the peek behind the curtain and hear the quote unquote language used between the two. And I think this is this is the NBA, so it doesn't surprise me. It's a very, very brilliant idea to put this stuff out there. Because I think it's great marketing.
The contrast was amazing because the one that you sent me of all of their trash talking was from the previous weekend when they had played the 76ers gaming, which was the only team that has beat them. And they were like totally up for that. This week, they were silent. There was little to no trash talking, and they had like big circles under their eyes, like "Mama, I'm that man." Like really looked like they hadn't he looked like he hadn't slept. I mean, they were just. I think they had flown in like really late or whatever, but like they were not talking. But when it came down to it at the end, it was fun to watch them put it together because they were just like, no, we are not going to lose this. And they started to talk a little bit. But, I mean, that's why they weren't winning. It's because they weren't talking and communicating until the very, very end. But it was fun. I just got to get my plug in there. Everybody go watch it. So fun.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely great. And, again, if you haven't got a chance to check it out. Head over to Twitch. You can watch some of the replays.
And, like, nobody's told us that we need to push Blazer5 Gaming. No. It just happens to be so fun.
Yeah, you coming into this, you weren't aware of really how this whole thing worked and whether it was worth watching or if it was fun or if it's entertaining. It's not going to be for everybody like anything else out there. But if you're looking for something to just kill some time and have some fun and enjoy watching, I think
and
it's worth
watching
your
Portland
time.
dominate
and
destroy all the other teams. That's the part that I particularly like. It turns out I do like watching winning.
It's so great that we've had this argument for so long that seriously, you will enjoy winning once you get it, Tara. You will seriously enjoy it and you will crave it and you will trash talk and you will enjoy it and embrace it.
I certainly want it from my my esports team.
Yep. See, now I'm telling you, if the Blazers ever get to that point where they're just stomping everybody and talking trash, you will love it and embrace it. So
I would never yell at real people like I'm yelling at the Blazer5 Gaming. I guess there are real people behind those too. I should probably take it easier. Anyway, let's wrap it up for the evening. We've got a week, almost exactly a week left until free agency starts. My guess is that absolutely nothing is going to happen. It's going to be DEAD until LeBron makes his choice, and then it's going to be like everybody's going to like all of a sudden just have to like jump into action. But up until then, it's going to be dead quiet. One thing I think that would be hilarious is if like tomorrow LeBron was like, "Oh yeah, I'm staying in Ohio." I think that would be so funny because everybody would be so caught off guard, thinking that they had like 2 more weeks to figure this out. I just want him to mess with people. I just love it when he's
going to take a sweet time. So anyway,
next time
we could hope for
it. It'll be free agency season.
Yes, and thank God because I just want to know what this team's going to look like going forward. At this point, that's really more than anything.
Yeah. All right. Well, you can find me at TCBBiggs on Twitter. You can also email us at blazersedgepod@gmail.com. Dan, why don't you take us out of here?
All right, folks. You can find me on Twitter at DMarang, at DMARANG. On Blazers Outsiders on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Game nights coming into the season. We'll have some changes and surprises for you guys to check out. More on that once I get the clarification and go ahead from the powers that be. In the meantime, July 12th, if any of you are baseball fans, the Blazers Outsiders will be out at the Pickles game for Blazers night, and we'll be throwing out the first pitch and broadcasting live from the park there. So that's something cool that's coming up here for the summertime. Other than that, just kind of grinding until free agency, folks. So if you got questions between now and then, make sure to send them our way, either to Tara or to I. Like us, find us, subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Megaphone FM, Almighty Baller Podcast, and Radio Network, everywhere else for your podcast needs. Until next week, folks, we will catch you then. See ya.